Hello, friends. Welcome back to a special presentation, a follow-up from Saturday's evening's mosted postly thing. Because we really didn't get very far in the video, so we are going to try and make up some time. Now, of course, I started right as we go into ad. That's okay. So they say that there are two types of people in the world. Those who, when they hear hello, their first thing is to hear it in Lionel Richie's voice. Hello. And then there are people who hear Pink Floyd afterwards. Is there anybody in there? Just nod if you can hear me. But me, I'm the third type of person. When I hear hello, I think sha-la-la-la-la, shaboom, shaboom. Hello, hello again, sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. Life is but a dream. They say that there are three types of people in the world. Those that can count and those that can't. What was it you were saying? There are two types of people in the world. Those who can extrapolate from given data.
Yep.
There are five types of... No, wait. There are three types of... No, wait. There are two types of people in the world. Those who can tell a joke... Wait.
And those that need to remember to breathe.
There are 10 types of people in the world. Those who can count in binary and those who can't.
Congratulations. You win. Wow. They're one type of living person in this world. Those that can breathe. And me.
Not my joke. I just saw it and I have to share though. What is the internal temperature of a tauntaun?
I don't know.
It's warm.
Ha! And I thought, they smell bad on the outside. Today's pre-roll brought to you by The Hidden Leaf, downtown Charlottesville, Virginia, on the Downtown Mall, 105 West Main Street, above the Brick, Suite 200. Between the Green Cauldron and Hamilton's. A great place to go with some great buds to get some great buds, eh, bud? The only thing better than their bud is their customer service. They also have the lowest prices in town, according to my own personally highly biased research, by which mean I was incredibly high when I did my biased research. Don't forget to check the website for times and events. The website is thehiddenleafcville.com. That's thehiddenleafcville.com. A note of disclosure, we are covering political opinions this evening, so any of the opinions you hear expressed herein belong to us or the expressor of the opinion and possibly to the channel. However, they do not belong to any of our sponsors, including the Hidden Leaf, or the Kush Gang, purveyor of very fine edibles, or Firehouse Craft Farms. I don't know that they're organic. And of course, Kush Gang is usually here for our Saturday morning stuff, but this is a special presentation because we were hijacked this last Saturday by a drunken future ex-husband and future ex-husband-in-law of mine. And we had a lot of fun. I made it a little bit further in the video in Deja Shadé's video, The Privatization of Everything. But we really had a very hard time paying attention, so we figured we'd do a special presentation and try to make it a bit further through so that we're on schedule for next week.
Apparently, they spent all of our budget on booze, therefore we were too broke to pay attention.
Exactly. Yes, that is exactly how it happened. Oh, cool. Over on YouTube right now, one of the creators that I follow is having a belated birthday stream. John Lewis. Yeah.
Very nice.
So, happy birthday to John Lewis. A belated happy birthday to John Lewis. And good night to Trollhalla.
Yep.
Who is working on her last week of school before the summer vacation. So, whew. You know, it's gotta really be, when we get done with the privatization stuff, and she gets like a week out, I do want to get her, feelings on what it was like teaching, trying to teach civics, in the last half of the school year. Yeah. You know, I know. Yeah, I do. I want to get her. I want to get her take on this last, basically last half of the school year. This last. Trying to find a nice way to put it. In any case, let us go ahead and switch on over here to the video we're gonna be watching. Yeah, privatization of everything. How America sold itself out. I'm trying to remember exactly where we left off. We were talking about healthcare, and how the American healthcare, the United States healthcare system was.
We were, but we also were kind of still hovering over the roads and stuff that she
Oh
talked
yeah,
about.
that's
I'd
right.
say
The roads. We don't even own the roads in the U.S. anymore.
if you can go back just a tiny little bit, like about 5 minutes, so we can hear what we didn't entirely hear clearly before.
I think I have actually skipped it back about 5 minutes. Maybe a little more. And you know what? We're going to go back even just a little bit further. Everybody clicked on and ready to go?
I believe so.
All right. Give us the tea, Deja.
Who paid for this mistake? If you guessed the public, you were right. Tolls immediately spiked. The foreign company increased the tolls 76% in just 7 years, which led to truckers and commuters avoiding the road altogether. They would take other roads and ended up clogging up the smaller highways, increasing accidents, driving up the road maintenance costs for those roads. This deal also locked India.
And that's where we had to stop because lockpick.
There's no need to derail us by explaining the derailing.
Right.
This is true.
No, to Lockpick's credit, I think on that one detail, he may be very well correct. But, again, I don't think it undermines her larger point at all.
No, I mean, I would expect him to be more correct because of his profession.
Right. And it also, when he said that, it was like, oh yeah, that does make sense. That is, even though it seems very counterintuitive, to some degree that the more traffic and the more heavy vehicles on a road, the slower the traffic goes, so the safer it is. Yeah, just. But again, I don't think it invalidates her larger point in any way.
Indiana into a 75-year non-compete clause, meaning that the state literally cannot build any competing roads without paying penalties to the private owners of the road. You can't even make your area better unless you pay the owners of that road, because making it better would be competing with them for 75 years. Does that blow anyone else's mind? Because that blows my mind. Like, you're locked in.
Right,
You
I've
can't
got one here. My question is, why is that something that is still holding true? Because in
the non-complete clause?
Because in a lot of areas, judges have been ruling and they've been throwing out non-compete clauses that are extensive.
Yes. However,
in all various sectors.
However, and this is part of the problem with the universal injunction. This is so the way the system is currently working is with this specifically, it has to be a case that's brought before a judge for that road. I'm pretty sure. Let me stop here. I'm saying this like I know what I'm talking about, and I don't. But I am pretty sure that for each road, for each non-compete clause, you need to, or for each contract, it needs to go before a judge, and that judge needs to rule that specific one invalid. Or it so happens that they can rule invalid in all NDAs in a certain type of profession, but they haven't yet said NDAs, all NDAs are out, or not NDAs.
Non-compete is not the same as an NDA.
I'm sorry, getting confused. Not NDAs, NCCs, non-compete clauses. They're saying non-compete clauses. Well, okay. For it to happen, each road would have to take that to court to get that ruled on in their very specific instance. And the reason I remember this is because, if I'm remembering correctly, this is the way it was for the TV station. Not only did everyone have to abide by the non-compete clause, but if anyone wanted to challenge it, it was an individual thing. It wasn't it wasn't a challenge for the non-compete clauses for all of the anchors or all of the videographers or all of the tape editors. It was that specific person and that specific job. I signed 2 non-compete clauses. I signed one for the tape editing, for all the editing work I did, saying that I wouldn't go somewhere in the next few years. I think it was a year or something. I wouldn't go somewhere in 100-mile radius, I think it was. Like, I couldn't. Richmond was too close. DC wasn't, I think.
Right.
But I had to sign the same thing for being a cameraman, for operating the camera. So I I also couldn't operate a camera. It's not like I could go, you know, yeah, like they were separate contracts. They were separate non-compete clauses. And if I wanted to invalidate both of them, uh I'd have had to have filed a motion for each one individually. And where the universal injunction thing that they're bringing before the Supreme Court right now, what they're trying to do, NCCIAARPBS.
Alphabet soup.
CBS 2. The universal injunction thing, though, is trying to say that not just for things like non-compete clauses, but for everything, you only get the law only covers you if you go to court. You are not protected by the law unless you can take it to court. Is what they're saying. They basically what they're trying to say is,
You have to pay for the law to apply.
Yes.
Kind of, but what they're trying to say is that immigrants, in order for immigrants to stop being deported without due process, each immigrant who doesn't want to be deported without due process has to make their own separate case as to why.
Yeah, no, that is again, that's not kind of, that is explicitly making you pay to have the law applied to you,
Yes.
because the law is due process.
Yes. The other part of this is they're saying that also the law, due process comes second. Execution of a law comes first, and due process comes second. They're sort of paving the way to take away our guns and then say, if you want your guns back, each individual has to sue to get their guns back.
Yeah, no. That is legitimately the opposite of what the Constitution said.
Exactly. And they can have mine when they pry it from my cold dead hand.
But
honestly, though, I've always been on this side of gun ownership. No matter what people think about me, I have always been on the no, we should own them.
Yeah.
We should be allowed to own them. Even if I've never been much of a gun shooter, I've always been, no, we should own them. There are crazy people out there trying to take our stuff away.
I mean,
I'm not talking about individuals trying to break in and rob you. I am talking about the system, the systems of power at play that we were told to keep a well-regulated militia to guard against.
yes. And that is something that I know you and I have both seen various interviews of immigrants that have come in, and refugees that have come in from certain other countries where they experienced things that were very similar. And they're like, yeah, this is what's going on. And I risked everything to get here to get away from that, and now it's happening here.
Right. And the thing is, the execution of a lot of these authoritarian measures that he's
Mm.
setting up to work on is going to be really hard. Because it's not going to be easy to convince any American to part with their gun. It's not going to be easy to convince any American that they don't have due process. Now, it's easy to convince an American that somebody else doesn't have rights. But when you try to convince an American that they themselves don't have rights, we get a little violent. We get a little
Because
Florida man.
as much grief as the average U.S. citizen gives to Florida for Florida man, or to the South for the rednecks, or to the people out west for being cowboys, or being preppers, or being militia nuts.
There's a dash of it in the heart of all of us.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the things that we produce, creative wise, during certain periods of history, there's a reason why various things did so well, movie and book and TV show wise.
Yes.
There's a reason why all of a sudden you had a rash of movies dealing with kids that were having to take up military or quasi-military roles.
Red
Like
Dawn.
Yes.
And what was the one they filmed at Miller School?
Toy soldiers.
Toy
Toy
Soldiers.
Soldiers.
Right.
Iron Eagle.
Iron Eagle. Right. All of these things where the kids. And, oh man. And we were all raised on that.
Toy soldiers, not to be confused with small soldiers, which was the one about the toys.
Exactly.
Right. I really did feel like they got the naming wrong. Also, not to be confused with Little Monsters.
Right.
Or Real Monsters.
But those particular war movies that featured
Invasions and yeah, kids
and invasions and things like that. What was happening at that time in the world? Because those all came out in.
It was, well, they were Cold War. It was Cold War era stuff. It was very Soviet, and it was when the Cold War was really getting hot. It was when it was getting really, when there was a lot of proxy wars between the US and Russia going on around the globe. And there was a lot of fear of Russia invading.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Russia.
You're right. The Soviet Union. In Soviet Russia, we had no food to eat. Wait.
Mm-hmm.
In Soviet Russia, road forks you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So that was early 80s, mid 80s stuff. And the movie that I remember from when things started to settle down is one called Ruskies, which dealt with finding, kids finding a foreign soldier, a foreign sailor on U.S. soil and managing to help him escape back home. We went from we need to be on high alert because everybody's on high alert to we're learning to be friends and this is how we're being friends. you can't stay here because you're not allowed to stay here, but we're going to actively help you go home.
Sort of an enemy mine / Hunt for Red October.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Definitely a case of learning that while the governments are having issues with each other, recognizing that on a person-to-person level, everybody's just people.
Again, Enemy Mine, great movie for that. And the episode of Starship Enterprise that they did based on it, also great. Didn't they do... I mean, that story...
Don't you just love the intro song for that series?
You, sir, you.
I guess that's what happens when you privatize the music industry.
That song is an absolute abomination to everything, including hair metal.
And Lockpick's not in the chat to help.
No, you don't.
Right side, Lockpick's not here to hurt either one of us.
You do not know the malice in my heart for that song. You cannot understand the visceral reaction I have. Lockpick's reaction was
fair. I understand.
Was the exact thing that happens inside my head, even when I'm sober.
Well, maybe if I privatized my industry for understanding, I could.
You're really trying hard to get us back on this.
He's gone to go answer the door and retrieve the pizza, so,
okay.
He's left the room now. He threw a parting shot and ran away. I'm going to note, though,
we still haven't made it much further.
This is the internet, and I really would not say such strong opinions about things like that.
I will die on this hill.
You can. It's just you're going to have people that decide they want to send you things that contain that because
that's fine. Let them. But I maintain that I have this opinion of that song.
As long as you tell people if they want to hear you, if they want to watch you open whatever it is on stream, that they have to pay first.
They have to. They also have to warn me. Because if I just start getting random stuff with that, no, we will be ordering from what was that website?
RuinedDays.com?
Yes, RuinedDays.com. I will be sending people a bag of dongs.
They have beautiful glitter there.
Mm-hmm. All right. But no, oh gosh, what was the point I was trying to make? Never mind.
Well, my point was originally that yes, they're trying to do this right now with whatever for this universal injunction, but before they get that, you have got a great number of courts that have looked at various non-compete clauses and non-disclosure clauses and said these are not valid.
Right.
And they've just tossed them out in all sorts of cases to the point where most companies are now understanding that either they're not enforceable, they're not worth the paper they're written on, or if they are, especially in a non-compete clause, it's only valid roughly for the amount of severance you're giving the person.
Right.
So if you're in some tech company,
but this is okay. See, but here's the thing: this is not an individual. This
is a corporation. Corporations are counted as individuals, so therefore they can just go.
Only when it's advantageous. When it's disadvantageous, they're counted as corporations.
You got my soda?
they can walk that line.
They can, or they can
And
try.
also, it's not just a corporation, it's a country or a state. States don't have the same freedom to get out of contracts that individuals and corporations do. A state or a country makes that contract, then they're seen to have to hold that up, or else their validity as an autonomous country or an
Entity.
autonomous entity is questionable.
Right. So if we're watching this, if we're thinking about the privatization of our roads and things, if we're looking around at the roads and realizing that the only way things are getting fixed is because we're out there hunting down potholes and spray painting obscenities around them so that they actually have to be filled in and paved properly.
Right.
And that's only happening because the city or the county doesn't want profanity on their roadway, so they're making this happen. Then maybe as we're working on building ourselves back up to take and do things again, we start requiring our people to look at how these contracts for roads are handled. And
I think you're looking a little too far forward at the moment. I mean, I agree with you, but I think you're looking a little too far forward. I think that the focus of the states and the corporations is currently backwards. And I think I need to put this on BRB. I will be right back, folks.
okay.
Hello, we're back. Sorry about that, friends.
I meant to tell you that is a really cool be right back.
Thank you. That's Marie and I on.
I recognize the work. It's still really cool.
Yeah. I, I'm supposed to have something else that we're working on at the moment. I can't remember what it is, and I have a feeling that she needs something from me to continue working on it. And I can't remember what I feel really bad because she's really good to us.
I know what she needs. Input.
Very true. Johnny Five?
Correct.
Ha ha!
Side note.
Short Circuit. Yes.
Got to watch Thunderbolts tonight.
That's, yes.
During one of the end credit scenes that Marvel likes to do.
Yes. Oh, how many were there?
2.
Nice.
David Harbour. They changed him from the way he looked throughout most of the movie with his wild hair and beard.
Yeah.
To, kind of cleaned up with his hair kind of cut and slicked back and his little mustache.
Tom Selleck mustache.
Huh?
Tom Selleck mustache.
Tom Selleck.
Compared to what he had beforehand, it was a little mustache.
Tom Selleck mustache? Is that what he said? Is that what?
Yes. That's the trimmed down version of what he had before.
I mean, Tom Selleck's still Tom Selleck.
In profile, with his hair slicked back, you guys kind of looked similar for a moment when they were doing the pan shot in the aisle.
Oh, okay.
Gee, you
I
look kind
was
of like Trevor standing there in the grocery store.
I was wondering where you were going with this, by the way, the Thunderbolts thing. Like, you'd be surprised. I look like a lot of people. Or, more to the point, a lot of people look like me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just, there are a lot of imitators. But I'm the only real Trevor Stewart 1308. That's really messed up because there are a lot of people, even not stars, not famous people, just people out there in the world
Mm-hmm.
who look like me enough that, like, my friends are like, oh my god, there goes the Trevor lookalike. I'll walk into a place and people are like, hey, your doppelganger was just in here.
Good to know.
Great. Never seen in the same room at the same time with the guy, though, am I? You sure he's my doppelganger? We might be the same guy, for all you know.
That's a good one, love.
Trevor Oldman or Gary Stewart? It's EW. Spelled correctly, thank you very much.
And that reminds me of a joke about Sean Bean. Why does he die in so many movies?
I don't know why.
Because the universe is angry about how his name is pronounced. It should either be Sheen Bean or Sean Bond.
So they're settling by making him a zombie.
Sean Bean alive, Sean Bean dead.
Alright. Now we can get back to the video.
The point
did not
about the
cut this at all.
privatization being that because these states are playing by a certain set of rules, they've written themselves into a corner where they're having to now pay off somebody in Spain and then somebody in Australia every time they want to do work on their own roads.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Prove unless I pay you. I can't make anything better
mean,
for my citizens unless
insane.
I pay you. Private owner somewhere in Spain. Disaster struck, a major flood in 2008. The state had to pay the private company $447,000 just to waive evacuation toll. The privatized toll road wasn't just a bad deal, it was a complete loss of public control. They had to pay the private company money to waive the toll so that they could evacuate people. 8 years in, and the owners went bankrupt due to reckless speculation, aka gambling, which gave Indiana a chance to take the road back, okay? But instead, Governor Mike Pence doubled down, selling it off again.
Mm-hmm.
Indiana and Mike Pence.
Mm-hmm.
And we expect a wise decision to come out of this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
And
There
this
was a
time
wise
to Australia.
What? What?
There was a very wise decision from him. Very notable wise decision from Mike Pence.
What? To run away?
What?
To run away?
No.
Okay, what?
What did he do on January 6th?
Not get lynched?
Was he the one that hid under his desk?
No. He very specifically did not follow his boss's demands.
He he didn't follow his boss's commands to do something that he was incapable of doing. I mean,
Or attempt to do something that he was not supposed to be able to do.
I do respect that he had finally hit his limit and was like, no. But
he hit his limit about halfway through that, because halfway through Trump's first term, he and Pence were not on good terms.
No, but like Pence was still not.
I'm not saying he's a great man. I'm saying I actually respect him for that.
Oh, for having that moment. I respect that moment. I'll respect him in that moment. But I really do. It really feels like a Virginia joining the revolution. Oh, you guys are winning? Yeah, I'm on your side. You know, it really feels like it okay. It really feels like his motivations in that moment were not as noble as maybe we would hope they would have been.
Caring about his full motivation. I'm caring about his action being the correct action by the letter of the law, as opposed to, and he continues to stand behind it, as opposed to a number of representatives who were screaming their heads off on the day, but are now like, oh, it was just a rally of love.
Like Turtle Yertle the Turtle Moscow Mitch? Yes, I do agree with you there. I do respect that he has stood by his condemnation, which is less easy, I think, than it would be for him to have brushed it off and said, okay, maybe I was wrong, blah blah blah, whatever, kiss the ring, kneel, whatever. I don't think we should mistake Pence for a McCain, though. John McCain, while he had a good, I think, 6 or 8 years of insanity when he was running against Obama around that time. John McCain, before and after that point, was a pretty morally and ethically sound fellow. I feel like he was not, yeah, I disagreed with him on a lot. But I would never have worried that John McCain did not have the best interests of the country at heart. Whereas
current administration, we know that's not the case.
And Pence, I don't think I would trust Pence to have the nation's best interests at heart. I trust Pence to have Pence's best interests at heart.
Well, put it this way. If we want to go into some terms that a number of us will recognize, Pence falls on the D&D alignment chart as lawful evil.
Yes.
So, if he were to attempt to do things that were against the nation's best interest, he would still be attempting to do it within the law and abiding by the decisions handed down.
Right. I don't think that John McCain was evil. I think John McCain was neutral good to lawful good. You know, he just had a glamour put on him for 8 years, 6 or 8 years.
Say neutral in that, keeping that in mind.
Certainly lawful. Certainly lawful. And I would say good. I would say a good person. Like, he was not a villain. W. Neutral evil. Chaotic neutral evil.
No,
Ca-
more law than that. I'm not saying that he's a good person by your standards, but I'd say there's much more law involved.
oh, you think for W? Nah. HW, yeah. W, nah. Now for um for what's his name, for his vice president. um
Which one are we talking about?
W's vice president. You know, the guy who shot somebody in the back and then got him to apologize for it.
Mm-hmm.
Lawful evil.
Now, we can spend an entire stream debating on D&D alignments of various politics,
We could.
but we're here for a different stream.
We are. And in fact, you know what? I think we should at some point have a D&D alignment for politicians stream. Cuz I think that would really give us I think that where we put people would show a lot about who we are individually. Not necessarily so much about whoever we're dealing with, but it would show a lot about who we each of us are. All right, so to get back to the privatization of everything.
Australia's IFM investors for $5.72 billion. Not a dime went back into the public. It just covered all of the existing debt. And while everyday Americans watched the tolls jump another 126% after Daniel's initial subsidy expired, executives from the bankrupt company walked away with $2.45 million in bonuses. This isn't just Indiana, though. Public-private partnerships have been used across the country to shift control of the infrastructure from citizens to corporations. Look at Chicago's parking meters. The city leased them to a private firm backed by Morgan Stanley in a 75-year deal. They just love that
Charlottesville's
75
meters.
number. And it's already cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue. The company hiked the parking rates immediately, and now they collect every single dime that used to fund public services. But it doesn't just stop there. Because the city has to compensate the private owner every time the metered spaces are removed, efforts to expand public transit have been shut down. Plans for bus transit lines, protected bike lanes, these things are stalled because moving any parking spaces would trigger financial penalties under the privatization contract. This means that Chicago's ability to improve its own transit, its cycling, its pedestrian safety is handcuffed by a deal that prioritized immediate cash and long-term private profit over sustainable urban planning for, at least 75 years. They're locked in. In the context of transportation, it doesn't stop at roads. Air traffic control has been a privatization target for decades. Since the 1970s, Big Airline has spent millions lobbying to take air traffic control out of the public's hands and turn it into a private nonprofit that's going to be controlled by a board dominated by major airlines. This board would set the fees, they would own the property, and then they would operate with zero congressional oversight. And they claim that this would make air travel more efficient, but in reality, it's a power grab. And mark my words, the next big push to privatize the FAA will come from President Musk and the Trump administration, because of course it will. Almost every major metro city would benefit from public transit. It reduces congestion, it cuts down pollution, it strengthens local economies. But we've been conditioned to see it as a consumer product instead of a public good. And billionaires like the Koch brothers want to keep it that way. They have this group called Americans for
way-
Prosperity that leads.
I do think we should start pronouncing their names like that. I think we should start calling them the Koch brothers instead of the Koch brothers. Either that or Choke brothers.
I think Choke Brothers is better.
I have no problem with Koch brothers because you got to be on Coke to believe them.
Well,
I really disagree, man. I disagree. I think that calling them the Koch brothers is giving Coke a bad name.
yeah.
I mean, I may not do Coke anymore, but I don't want one of my favorite drugs to be associated with those
You
guys.
see this? I opened this, and this appeared, and immediately started sniffing, trying to get this. This
You
is not my
opened-
cat.
And he's a sucker, knows a sucker when he sees
I know that he knows a sucker when he sees one.
Not your cat. As long as the cat belongs to one of the two of you in the apartment.
It doesn't matter who or where he came from. He is not getting my brownie.
He looks offended.
He can sit there and look offended all he wants.
Ain't nothing I'm about to say gonna be right, so I'm just not gonna say anything at all. We're gonna
Nixie
go back
won't
to
get this. He ain't getting it.
Hella coordinated
I'll-
attacks on public transit, blocking expansion projects.
People who pick post-university choose our 100% online Master of Education program so they can learn practical
At least
skills.
that one's skippable.
It is, but let's just take a moment here and apply some of the critical thinking skills that we've been working on, right?
Mm-hmm. No. You keep that to yourself.
What?
Whatever thought I heard about to come out, you keep that quiet. Go on, Trevor.
I swear we're not paid by General Mills to tear down Post. No, Post University, right?
Mhm.
Now, this is gonna be a for-profit correspondence school.
Mm-hmm.
Private equity. I mean, I don't know that it's a private equity firm funded, but
If they're actually making money, no.
private money
Mhm.
has gone into making this for-profit university.
Mm-hmm. They have investors.
Do we think that the product that they offer, the education that they offer, is of a commensurate value to education from a public university, let's not say a public university, let's say a public community college, right? Because that's essentially what post-university, that would be the analog, right? Well,
Yes and no, because unfortunately, the way a bunch of secondary schools have gone about things makes them, a great number of them, effectively privatized in that fashion, including community colleges.
mm,
They may not have specific investors, but they do have specific donors.
okay. But the accreditation system
Mm-hmm.
is the accreditation system maintains a certain level of academic rigorousness. You
No.
know that the courses you take at these universities, at these colleges, are gonna be of a of an academic equality to, well, of an academic standard that is necessary to move, that is supposedly necessary to move forward in the job market. Do we think that these for-profit correspondence schools offer an academically rigorous enough program that it will be effective in the job market?
Yes and no.
I'm asking, I do realize I know the answer already.
Yeah.
I know an answer.
Mm-hmm.
NPR did a bit about this a while back, and I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of kept it in my back pocket, just knowing I was going to need to go off on for profit
Mm-hmm.
universities at some point. The answer is no. No, they don't. They do not offer academically equivalent. They really don't. They offer as little as they can for as much of your money as they can. And a lot of times, people coming out of these programs are coming out of these programs without the skill set necessary or the actual accreditations necessary. It was, and I don't know about Post specifically,
Mm-hmm.
but I do know that these for profit universities, these are where we were getting the nursing staff who had the degrees that weren't real.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's this kind of for profit university
I think
diploma
there
mill.
needs to be a distinction made, though,
Okay.
of as a student, if you are looking for a place to go, it is possible for these for-profit places, most of them, to not be good. It's possible for some to be good. But the big thing is that it is possible for them to pay for someone to say that they do the things that they do, to have them accredited as a school to teach whatever, and for it to look like the accreditation of other schools that teach the same thing.
Okay.
So you've got two different markers there. The first is when they're luring in people to pay them, they're making it look like they know what they're doing,
Right.
because there are actual systems in place to make sure that they are actually teaching what they're teaching. And all they have to do is change a letter or have the same letters of the same organization, but make sure that in print underneath that they're saying what the actual organization is that's accrediting them. and giving them
Right.
their things. And if you're not paying attention, you'll see something that says like the National Education Association, because you see the NEA and it matches their logo, but underneath it could be the Newark Endoscopy Association, and they're accredited by people that look at ears and noses, and they don't actually know how to teach you to do books.
Right.
Now, there are some
Caveat
cases.
emptor. Buyer beware.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is this was an off the cuff exercise. So there's a conspicuous lack of research for us.
Peanut Gallery has something to add.
Yes, please go right ahead.
So, I believe I have heard and honestly believe that there are some cases where they say that they will prepare you for an industry.
Mm-hmm.
But while they do prepare you for the industry, they are so hyper focused. They are effectively a paid internship, as in you pay to work for this company that will then possibly hire you based on your work from what you paid for the internship.
Yes. Yes.
Which again is buyer beware, and also not giving you your bona fide certificate.
Yes.
But it still behooves them to teach you the actual courses that they're saying.
And
True.
yes, these are all a bunch of different ways that these for-profit universities can be dangerous. Now, again, I don't know anything specifically about Post. We have a conspicuous lack of research going into this because it did just pop up, and I wanted to exercise some critical thinking skills on the fly.
So yeah.
They're a social community academic movement.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Very well done, guys. Good points all the way around.
Very nice. Very nice.
Well, points made all the way around. All right. Now we can skip the rest of this ad.
Pushing really extreme anti-rail initiatives in
Koch
cities like
brothers.
Nashville, Phoenix, Detroit. In Phoenix, they poured in outside money to kill a light rail expansion, pushing a ballot measure that would have banned all future rail projects. Voters ultimately shot it down, but the message should be pretty clear. Corporate-backed interests will fight to keep you stuck in a car-centric city and a long commute, and they will keep public transit inaccessible and underfunded. And by allowing this, we are also committing a theft that not enough people talk about when they're signing these 75-year leases. I'll go back to that Indiana toll road example. It's the current generation that has the access to this road right now. But future generations are going to have to shoulder the burden through the ever-increasing tolls. When the future Indiana citizens need to improve or repair that infrastructure, they're not going to have access to the ITR toll revenue as a funding source because it belongs to a private entity. What that means, in the simplest way that I can put it, is we enjoy the benefits today while our children foot the bill. This is intergenerational theft, and at this rate, the kids don't even stand a chance. I was really fortunate that I had a great public school education. I went to school all over San Bernardino and LA County in California, but it wasn't until I grew up that I realized that not everyone had that same experience. And I realized that now was because my school was properly funded. Even as a low-income student, especially from Head Start to 8th grade, my public school had regular field trips. We went to theaters, we had workshops. My 5th grade year, we spent a week away from home at science camp as a class. We held student council elections, we had after-school programs. It was just a really well-rounded experience, and I'm very grateful for how my public school laid the foundation for the love of learning that I have today. But
Who else had that public school that public school experience? Because while I had a few of those things, I can look at the public schools that I attended and go, we were not well funded.
Mm-hmm.
we did have field trips. Um, every few years would be a big one to like a zoo or the museums. Um, but we didn't have. I remember the last elementary school I had blew the wad on a new playground. And what really cost the money was the ground up tire chunks.
Mm.
I mean, it's Gordon Barber Elementary is not rich. You know, Gordonsville, a little more money's moved into Gordonsville, but in general, Orange County schools, not a lot of cash there. Having to just gone to see their senior production. God bless them for doing what they can with what they got. How well funded were your guys' schools?
Well, I was homeschooled right up until I put in my paperwork and went to PVCC. That was the first time I set foot in a real classroom outside of the house.
High school on the hill,
No,
13th
college.
grade. Yeah, high school on the
I
hill, 13th grade.
no. The T-shirt said UCLA, University of Charlottesville, located in Albemarle.
Yeah. Yeah. um well, for me, of course, it was 13th grade because so many tandemites went right across the hill to Piedmont. It was just so easy to go there.
Let's see.
Half the population of Tandem did that. The other half, the population, went directly into Ivy League schools.
Mm.
Let's see. I went to kindergarten in 2 separate states, elementary school in 2 separate states, middle school in Virginia, and it was a fairly decent experience.
State of confusion, state of denial. Then he got to Virginia and it was a state of depression.
And then high school, I went to a private high school because there was some unfortunate, obvious corruption at the public high school I would have gone to.
Wow.
As in, the principal knew what all the sports teams were doing, but did not know that the school's Latin club was making it to a regional competition, much less knew that they actually had one.
Huh.
And he would show up for morning announcements, leave in his expensive sports car, and then show up for closing announcements.
Wow.
Also, he ran a private tutoring service that he forced the teachers to work in for no additional pay.
Wow.
So yes,
This guy sounds like a villain. This guy sounds like a comic book, like not even a comic book villain, like a bad Disney movie villain. Like, how did you not, like, write about him in the school newspaper and expose it and unmask take the rubber mask off the ghosts?
I knew nothing about this. My parents noticed it. That's why I went to private school.
Wow. That's a valid reason not to go to the public school. I didn't go to public high school because cause I got suspended 3 times for fighting from Gordon Barber
Ooh.
in 1 year. My parents were like, I don't think public school's right for him.
Mm.
I mean,
Part of this we knew because we also had family friends who were teachers at the school.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's good to know. Well, all right. Now that we've all relived our high school nightmares, let's move on. God knows I've spent the rest of my life trying to move on from high school.
Learning that that is not the experience that Americans are having now. Now, instead of adequately funding all public schools, we're told to rely on charter schools or private schools and vouchers as the solution to government school failures. And what people are failing to realize is that the privatization of education is not about improving schools. It's, say it with me now, okay? It's about creating a business opportunity. And this opportunity is coming from the use of school vouchers and charter programs. School vouchers sound good on paper until you realize that they're just another way to drain schools and public tax dollars into private hands. So for those who don't know, the idea is simple. Instead of funding public schools directly, the government gives parents a voucher, essentially a check worth a certain amount per child. And then parents can then choose to use that voucher to pay for private school tuition instead. It sounds like freedom, right? Who could be upset at that, right? Well, here's what actually happens. Public schools lose funding while private schools rake in that in government money without the accountability. So every time a student leaves a public school using a voucher, that public school loses a chunk of its budget. But the costs of running that school, paying the teachers, keeping the lights on, maintaining classrooms, those costs don't go away. That means you have fewer resources for the kids that are left behind. And then who gets hurt the most? The low-income families, students with disabilities. Because the voucher programs don't require private schools to accept every student, they ban or reject students with learning disabilities, LGBTQ plus students, or students that they just don't feel like taking. They can make up their own rules, like pulling kids into the principal's office and forcing them to take off their clothes when their rash looks a little bit too much like a hickey. Yes, this happened. And here's what's even wilder. The vouchers don't actually cover the full cost of tuition at most private schools. So if you're already wealthy, a voucher is really just a discount on something you could have already afforded. But if you're working class, that voucher won't even get you into the door of a top tier private school. Instead, you're left with underfunded public schools and a growing number of low quality fly-by-night private schools that pop up just to cash in on the voucher money. Charter schools and voucher programs siphon public money away from public schools, contributing to them being underfunded while corporations and the billionaires who own these facilities cash in. This idea didn't just come from nowhere. Economist Milton Friedman planted the seed in the 1950s when he argued that public education should be replaced with a free market system. His so-called school choice model framed education as a consumer product instead of a public right. And then decades later, Donald Trump put Betsy DeVos in charge of the Department of Education, a billionaire who has made an entire career around dismantling public schools in favor of privatized alternatives. School choice also has ugly roots in segregation. Oh my God, bro. Can you just drop the identity politics? We were talking about stuff going private. How did we get on segregation? Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. I've got 3 reasons why this matters. 1, reality. The reality of the situation is we live in a capitalist nation. And one of the ways that capital is accrued is by identifying the needs and the desire of an audience and providing a solution for that specific need and desire. We're not even talking about the ethical issue of creating a problem and then providing a solution for the problem that you created. That's neither here nor there. That's not this conversation. So just stay with me. Don't go down that pipeline. But a key component of marketing and therefore capitalism is identifying the demographics of the audience that you are aiming at. Their race, their age, their gender, their belief, how they spend their time, what their frustrations are, all of it. You are mapped so that you can be sold to. So as long as you live in a place that designs its entire foundation around profit and selling something to you, marketing will exist. And as a result, identity politics will exist. Okay, so let's just get that out the way. Identity politics is a tool that is used throughout the entire political spectrum and then some. And so if you are someone who thinks that it only exists on one side, please know that even just that belief alone means that you were effectively marketed to. 2, I'm going to put this as simply as I can. Context matters. And 3, as much as I know that my identity as a Black woman has shaped my experience in this world, and that might upset a few people, but we are truly at a time where I don't care what you are in your current meat flesh suit. I'm not worried about any of that, because in case you didn't notice, the house is on fire. Okay? The house is on fire, so my culture is water. Water and escape. Resistance or escape. That's it. The people who understand the importance of our culture being water right now are who I am looking for. That's where I'm at. Okay? As the great Fred Hampton once said, we don't need no culture except revolutionary culture. Full stop. Now, back to context. The reality is that when courts ordered schools to integrate, some communities shut down public schools entirely. That's the reality of the situation. And instead, they chose to start issuing vouchers for white students to attend private whites-only academies. They framed it as school choice, but what it really was just a way to avoid integration and keep Black students out. Out of nowhere, by 1969, over 200 segregation academies had popped up across the South, and 7 states had voucher programs specifically designed to get around integration laws. This tradition continues today, backed by the billionaires like the Kochs, like Betsy DeVos. They seek to reshape public education.
This is not new.
No.
That's what struck me about this the first time through, was that this is not new. This is, and after it struck me the first time through, and I was like, holy crap, this isn't new. It's like, wait, did I hear about this? Have I heard about this before? And I believe I'd heard about it in passing as just sort of like oh yeah, that's what it was like. You know, I think my father said something about it in his childhood. You know, was supposed to be post-integration. His high school years were supposed to be post-integration, but deep South, and there were, definitely different schools for the rich white kids. Or for the less poor white kids, I guess. I don't think my father was even close enough to being able to go, even with a voucher. But this also brings up something that I'm actually just now realizing is, in Orange County, there were a lot of other schools that weren't the public high school. And it was, it wasn't talked a lot about, but there were these other private schools that were around that were just sort of not just Woodbury Forest. Woodbury Forest was the biggest, most public of the private schools around Orange. But there were, I want to say Grimes Memorial was one of them.
Could be. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, like again, we're operating off of memories that are ancient here, but there are around Orange County, and I'm guessing around Louisa County, and probably around all of the counties around here, there are a profusion of these smaller private schools that
In some counties,
that are
yes.
sucking up the charter cash.
In some counties, yes. In some counties, no.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure in some counties, yes, in some counties, no. I'm sure there are some counties that are so poor they can't even afford to have charter schools. They don't have anybody with money for the money to get taken away from.
Well,
But and really, it's not just really what this moment is for me is a realization that that's where in Louisa and Orange, that's where the money was going. That's why there could be, because there is a lot of money out there in Louisa County and in Orange County.
hmm
But it's not going into the infrastructure of Louisa or Orange. Or, I was going to say or Gordonsville, but I've driven down their main street recently.
mm.
Gordonsville's spending money like it's got it. And I mean, I know that because having lived there when I did and watching it pop up in the new money way it was,
hmm
watching the old money getting out of there,
hmm
uh, as nouveau riche French restaurants popped up in town.
mm.
I'm gonna
They
talk
had
a lot
restaurants
of
on Hardee's and Tasty Freeze.
barbecue exchange, man.
Oh, I mean,
Blue,
yeah.
yes, that is true, Peanut Gallery. That last thing you sent me is true. But but yeah, I think a lot of these, especially some of the poorer counties, where the money in the county is very concentrated. I think that that they're operating this charter school money shuffle
Well, part of
thing.
it, like I said, there are some counties that don't have them. Because I am most familiar with what's there. Nelson County. You have the Nelson County High School and middle school, and then you have 2 elementary schools in the whole county. There is 1 private school, but it is small. So
Okay. So in Nelson County, you do have school choice.
you have school choice, but
Your
you don't have
choice is
school.
school or not.
No, let me finish. Wait. Let me finish. You have 1 high school for the entire county. So I don't know if she mentions it or not, but sometimes what can happen with those vouchers is you can leave your district.
Oh, I know. We got
No. I mean, not just leave your district. You can choose because you live on this part of the county. You can choose instead to send your children to the public school in the next county over using that
using
voucher.
that voucher because it would cost money to send your kid to another public school usually.
Right.
Right. And I've seen that happen to Nelson with Albemarle.
Mm-hmm.
Same
Because
with
you've got
Fluvanna and Albemarle.
all those people that live up on Afton.
Right.
You know, they don't want to send their kids all the way down in the from Afton to Livingston is like an hour and a half bus ride with all those roads.
Right. However, they can drive their kids the 20 minutes down 64
Western Albemarle.
to Western or
Down
to
64, they just have to go 250. 15 minutes down 250.
or to Monticello.
Monticello's a bit out of the way, but if you're over there,
but the
but you could.
education is way better than Nelson County.
Except, but it is and it isn't. That's the thing, is that you've got the Nelson County guys that have been been steadily progressing and doing things, and they are winning championships and awards. But you don't hear about it as much because that's the academic stuff. What you hear about is the fact that the Nelson County football team hasn't won against Albemarle. Or they haven't won against
what I do
Waynesboro
know
because
is that Tandem caused brain drain on Nelson.
oh, definitely.
We took some of your best and brightest.
I don't doubt it.
That's the problem with, that's another part of, it's a microcosm of this school choice thing.
Mm-hmm.
The brain drain is a microcosm of the economic flight, and this sort of, and while we're discussing our experiences, we're dancing around this other aspect that the three of us are relatively way too mayonnated to talk about. But I'm going to talk about it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The racial aspect of this.
Mm-hmm.
It is awful. It was awful white at Tandem. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't some diversity, but there was a lot more diversity. No, there wasn't. There was a lot more black kids at Orange County High School. There was a lot more integration. There were poor people from every color at Orange County High School.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't know what the racial makeup of the school was because I didn't go there.
Mm-hmm.
I know that they had a higher percentage of black students than Tandem did, period.
Mm-hmm.
I would be willing to guess that they had a higher number of black students than the percentage of black students at Tandem. Considering there may have been 200 students, there may have been 5 of color.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me be honest about a certain subject real quick.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do not use the term mayonnaise or compare me to mayonnaise, because that has a much larger color palette than my background.
I mean, considering we're looking at a flight of ranch dips that come in various colors, I can.
Hey, I chose that because Pizza Hut had that as an option, and that was like, what the hell?
But still.
No, you're right. You're right. Mayo comes in many shades of white. From a creamy Simpsons yellow
Mm-hmm.
to a bleached out Hellman's Cracker Barrel white.
No, not Hellman's. You're thinking that cracked out white color. That's Miracle Whip.
Miracle Whip. Thank you, Miracle Whip.
That's not mayonnaise.
No, it's not mayonnaise.
It's not mayonnaise.
It's fake. It's so white because they put titanium dioxide or some other whitening agent in there to make it look pretty for the pictures.
And unfortunately, I have to lay claim to that as my whiteness.
You do. I
Yeah.
do not.
I respect that. I respect that. Salt. Nah, I was gonna try and make a saltine reference,
Mm.
but saltinated makes us sound angry, and I don't think that
Tasty.
works.
We were on the pale side of the equation.
Yeah, that's not that's way too nice. I'm looking for something that could be a slur. I'm looking for a way to say it that is unkind. Because honestly, I think white people need to have things that are unkind sounding land on their ears occasionally. And I mean,
That is.
crack ass
You can look.
honky is just a little over the PG-13 line for me to want to be saying every time.
Uh,
You saltine looking ghost after you been ate by Pac-Man para eyes so white you be see-through. But see, that's a lot to say each time.
say I can understand that, but there are limits to where what I will allow others to call me. Because my grandmother didn't do the things that she did for her grandchildren to get called names.
That's fair. That is fair. Uh, I have spent my entire life putting up with being called names because every time I've pushed back against it, it has been seen as unseemly, not part of the polite conversation, not polite debate,
Oh, yeah.
which is why I get so when people why I have such a problem with respectability politics. As far as calling people names, I get a wow. Okay,
Yep.
that's white.
What did you do? Never mind. I don't want to know what you did. To
That
get
is
that look
white.
on his face, I don't want to know what you did.
I that's white with a capital W, yo.
See?
There you go. Yes, mayo is too dark. Thomas's English muffins.
I mean, if all
Hot
else
buttered
fails,
crumpets. You are hot buttered crumpets white.
now we're English muffins. Okay. We've gone to cracker from cracker to English muffin. I think let's go back to cracker because we've all got way more sharp edges than the muffins do.
I don't know, man. Peanut Gallery's got a lot of little nooks and crannies.
True.
You know, this is completely off topic.
Yes.
I Cannot stand English muffins. Love a crumpet. Cannot stand an English muffin. English muffins taste like they have dust on them. Not like they're dusted with flour, but like they have dust from the floor on them. They taste dusty. Crumpets? No.
Have you ever gotten English muffins that are fresh baked?
Yep.
Okay. So
Still.
I've had some that were good, and all they had dust on them was a little bit of cornmeal, and they were good.
Oh, it's the cornmeal dusting on them that makes it taste like dust.
Could be. On the other
And
hand, I'm also
it shouldn't, because I like cornbread. I will
there's
eat.
a difference between cornbread and just effectively raw cornmeal.
If you want to talk about cornbread, you better pound cornbread correctly.
So
We're not starting this. We're not starting this.
My daddy, my father, was the first one in the family to go to college. He was. In fact, he went to Duke University. You believe that? Boy went to Duke University. Played football for him too. But when he got back around his family, and they really wanted to know what they taught him up there at that big brain school of his. What they teach you up there at that Duke school. So, well, if you're gonna find the area of a circle, the equation is power squared. Grandpa goes, boy!
Bam! Cornbread square!
Goodbye. I'm walking away to go get another drink.
That was terrible. That was terrible. That accent was awful.
Exactly.
That was not at all what my grandpa sounded like.
I was going all foghorn on that one.
More horn, less fog.
I say, boy.
Oh man, don't.
I say we get back to the video.
It's not as bad as my Arizona, but still don't.
Nothing could be as bad as your Arizona.
I'll take that as revenge. You've gotten your revenge, now don't. I'll say, boy, you bother me.
Education into a for-profit enterprise, leaving working class kids behind, selling the same segregation era idea under a new brand. The marketing is incredible if it wasn't so scary. Their goal, by gutting public education and turning learning into a profit-making scheme and leaving working class kids behind, they ensure that we never question authority and we do what we're told. That we work, but we rarely make enough to thrive, that we destroy our bodies, you make babies, you replace the slave labor force, repeat. Privatization doesn't just stop at K through 12. Your boy Reagan cut public funding for universities, forcing students into loans. By 2020, student debt had ballooned to over $1.6 trillion. And over time, Wall Street capitalized on these loans, lobbying to weaken bankruptcy protections and lock students into high interest debt. Universities, meanwhile, signed shady deals with lenders like Sallie Mae, profiting off of kickbacks while students bore the costs of creating an entire generation shackled to debt. When Bill Clinton did try to phase out private lenders in the 90s, Republicans blocked him, forcing a compromise that let Sallie Mae keep making private loans, charging massive fees and profiting off of students, all while still being backed by the government. By the early 2000s, investment groups like JP Morgan, Citigroup, and Bain Capital had fully infiltrated the student loan market. They lobbied to gut protections for borrowers and even got Congress to ban the Department of Education from marketing its own cheaper government-backed loan program. Sally Mae, meanwhile, paid off universities to push their predatory loans onto students. Schools got kickbacks, students got debt, banks got rich. And I wish that the privatization of education stopped at loans, but it does not. Testing companies, private contractors, and data firms have turned K-12 education into another profit center. Maximus Inc., Pearson, and for-profit charter school networks now oversee everything from standardized testing to special education services. The worse the public schools perform, the more money private companies make. So there's no real incentive to fix the system, just an endless cycle of failing schools, expensive testing, and privatization. At this point, education in America isn't a right. It's a financial pipeline and a way to control people. It starts with standardized testing, which determines the school's funding. It continues with private charter schools and voucher programs, draining public resources. And then for those who do make it to college, you have tuition hikes, privatized student loans, all already there to ensure that young people graduate into debt bondage. Education is not being treated like a public good anymore. It's an industry. If you think that this is just about money, look at the history and look at what's happening right now. The fight over education has always been about power and control. In the 1800s, anti-literacy laws made it illegal to teach enslaved people to read and write. Illegal, because literacy was seen as a threat to the system. The North Carolina General Assembly enacted a law, and that law specifically stated teaching slaves to read and write tends to excite dissatisfaction in their minds and produce insurrection and rebellion. When you think about the anti-intellectualism that is happening in America today, it's really not hard to draw the conclusion that an educated public is a public that can fight back. The corporate takeover of education is not just about extracting wealth, it's about keeping working people from gaining the knowledge, from gaining the tools and the power to challenge the system that's keeping them in debt. The reality of the situation is you are not just being robbed, you are being enslaved. Are you tired of so-called government schools forcing your kids to learn alongside just anybody? Well, families, worry no more. Introducing the Heritage Academy for the Pure and Proper, where your child's education is as
I missed the first time I watched that. I missed the pearl clutching. Well played. Peanut Gallery texted me, F Bain Financial, they killed Toys R Us. And yes, they did. Jeffrey's blood is on their hands. Out, damn spot. But it's the spots on a giraffe, not blood spots. What were you gonna say, Kat?
I honestly don't remember anymore. It will come back to me later.
I'm sure it will.
exclusive as your country club. We believe in traditional values, patriotic curriculum, and most importantly, hand-picking our students. Unlike those nasty public schools, we have the right to reject students we feel just don't fit our culture. Thanks to modern school vouchers, you can now use your tax dollars to send your child to a real school, just like our grandparents did before those pesky integration laws. Private prisons profit from incarceration, not rehabilitation. And a lot of them sign contracts that guarantee 80 to 100% occupancy, meaning that states have to pay for empty beds even if there's no one to fill them. Now, in a healthy society, crime going down should be a good thing. But in states like Arizona, law enforcement is basically pressured to find more people to fill those beds.
Yep.
This turns justice into a for-profit numbers game. That's not a justice system. That's a business model built on human suffering. And it's not just prisons. Private probation turns what's supposed to be considered a second chance into another form of a trap. In Greenwood, Mississippi, which is a town that has an average income of $14,000, a private probation company took over, and suddenly, in less than 6 months, 10% of the population was on probation for minor infractions like traffic violations or unpaid parking tickets. At this point, you have the company Judicial Correction Services was making around $48,000 a month. That's money that should have been put towards groceries, towards rents, towards childcare, but instead it was flowing backward into corporate pockets. And like clockwork, those fees piled up. People who couldn't pay those fees faced jail time. These companies function like payday lenders. They'll pile on drug tests, even if the original charge didn't involve drugs, background checks, community service fees, none of which actually improve public safety. Judges whose job it is to uphold justice often have financial ties to these private firms, making it profitable to keep these people in the system. Ankle monitors are pushed as an alternative to prison, but they also extract profit. You have these private companies companies that manufacture the equipment, and then they charge the offenders hundreds per month to wear it, plus any extra fees for any violations.
This is your ankle monitor. This particular model has caused some electrocution issues, but it's only for a minority of our customers.
I'm sorry, did you say electrocution?
Customers?
The goal is not rehabilitation. The goal is to keep the cycle
Did you say
going. And the corruption
customers?
doesn't just stop with companies, it seeps into the courts. Judges who are supposed to
That brings up a moment for me with the interlock device.
Mm-hmm.
When
Chris.
Oh, hey Chris. Chris into 386. Yeah, with the interlock device, when they were weren't doing their thing, when they were misscheduling my appointments, and I got I got all kinds of Karen up at them. I mean, I was forcefully advocating for myself. And at one point, I pointed out to them that they are a for-profit corporation. I do not believe that they have my best interests or even my success at heart. That they will make more money off of me if they screw something up and I go back to jail.
Mhm.
And that while I still had the option, I was probably going to stop dealing with them. They hadn't locked me into a contract yet. I was like, I'm a customer. So I could just stop. And they were very at that moment when they realized that they could lose my business. They became very eager to help. They began to see what they could do to help. Whereas after they had the device in and I was then at their mercy, because it would have been really hard for me to remove the device, to have the device removed and switch to a different company. It would have been easier for me than other people because I could have conceivably lived without my car for a little while all of this was going on. I had some... But they basically had me over a barrel. Once the device was in my car, they had me. They
Mm-hmm.
had me paying a certain amount a month. Actually, no. I paid it all up front so that they didn't have me paying a certain amount each month and remembering that.
Yeah.
But they also had the ability. They I don't want to say ability, but they no longer had the impetus to make everything function well for me. And it was only the fact that I had made friends with my technician and that I had a flexible schedule that meant when things went wrong and they didn't feel like catering to me because they knew they didn't have to, that I could make things work out. It was only by the grace of the gods and my own pleasant nature, basically, that I made it through that ordeal, through the ordeal of having the interlock device,
Mm.
at all. I mean, if I hadn't have if I hadn't have been I don't want to say if I hadn't have been friendly with the technician, but like if I hadn't have been if the technician weren't didn't find me to be a sympathetic character, shall we say, he wouldn't have the times when they didn't bother to tell me I had an appointment, he wouldn't have texted me personally to let me know, which is something
Right.
he did. There were times when they forgot to tell me I had an appointment coming up. Something, got out of something got changed or something got out of sync, and he texted me personally saying, "Hey, I don't know what's wrong, but you weren't here for the appointment and I have time this afternoon. If you can make it in this afternoon, I can, you know." So it is that same sort of like that same experience with the carceral system, with the ankle monitors, you know, well, or similar, I guess.
Ankle monitors or the smaller ones that look like a smartwatch, but you
Right.
still have to be careful when you're washing your hair because shock risk and things like that.
What do you mean minority? What do you mean customer?
Hmm.
To uphold justice now have a financial stake in keeping people on probation because private probation companies fund their operations. Some judges even admitted that they would hesitate to waive the supervision fees because it would hurt the private companies that run their probation systems. That's how far this has gone. Judges making a decision not based on justice, but on keeping a for-profit system afloat, or worse, receiving kickbacks. In Missouri and Tennessee, courts regularly called private probation officers to testify in hearings about whether or not someone should remain on probation. Think about that. The people who profit from keeping you on probation get a say in whether you get off probation. In 2016, the Justice Department tried to phase out private prison systems, only for Donald Trump to reverse the course, calling them better, conveniently after private prisons donated lavishly to his campaign. And after that, their stock soared. Studies by the National Institute of Justice and others also show private prisons cost as much or more than public ones. They have higher rates of violence, higher rates of recidivism, which basically just means more repeat customers for profit. When crime drops, it's equivalent to business slowing down, which means that these corporations seek out new revenue, immigration detention. Laws like Arizona's SB 1070 were pushed by the Corrections Corporation of America and ALEC to boost detention numbers, ensuring that policies like mandatory detention quotas stayed in place. By 2017, 75% of immigrant detainees were held in private facilities, and today, over 90% are, with guaranteed bed quotas funded by taxpayers. Private prisons trace directly back to convict leasing after the Civil War, when black codes were able to provide a steady supply of unpaid labor to replace slavery. More than a century later, we're still monetizing incarceration. So, penny for your thoughts, friends. Can a country that profits from incarceration headcounts ever truly believe in rehabilitation? When states have to
No.
guarantee that
No.
there's a minimum number of prisoners at all time, when judges work hand in hand with for-profit probation companies, when every person caught in the system represents another monthly payment to a private corporation. And as long as incarceration remains a business, there will always be an incentive to keep prisons full, to keep fees high, and to keep justice for sale. Real rehabilitation takes a back seat to maximizing returns, and we all pay more in the long run.
Yep.
Citizens are punished when they do commit crimes. The state governments are punished if they don't, but the private prison makes its money either way.
From the shore of
Just
the Atlantic
saying.
Ocean and Chesapeake Bay to the Blue Ridge Mountains and Cumberland Gap.
Yep.
And, they're talking about prisons, but this is not just prisons. This is jails as well. This is also jails. A good number of the people that I was in with were not there because they'd committed a crime. They were there because they were under ICE detention.
Mm-hmm.
They were there, I was there with a lot of people who weren't criminals.
Mm-hmm.
I was there with quite a few criminals, but I was also there with a lot of people who were just there because they were illegal immigrants. And I was there with a few other people like myself who were social criminals, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
People who were arrested for being just a little too different. Getting pulled over for DWB while being white.
Mm-hmm.
DWB, for those of you who don't know, is driving while black. So if you're
Speaking of
driving while
which, I
black
just
while being white, it's even more of an offense around here.
well, I mean, because not only do you have whatever they pulled you over for, but you also have the faux pas of.
Right?
But speaking
Oh,
of that,
yeah, I noticed that.
after
An
Saturday's
imitation
mentioned,
substance?
exactly.
Okay. So, a Chesterfield police officer resigns after being arrested. Oh, I mean, Chesterfield police officer. Police say the 40-year-old officer was charged with possession with intent to distribute an imitation substance.
Yep.
Oh, homie, you're outside of Richmond. You should be doing better. You should be ashamed of yourself. Imitation substance. That's some Charlottesville crap. Imitation substance. Are you kidding? That's like...
And conspiracy. Don't forget the conspiracy as well.
I didn't notice conspiracy. Of course, I also didn't open it up to read it. I just got to that point.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Given your comments on Arrestafield, when this came across the news feed a little while ago, it's like, I need to send this to you.
Yeah.
And then you gave me the perfect opening to mention it.
I really did. All right, let's go back to this. Oh.
What?
I'm gonna do a BRB again real quick. I think a kitten is asking to come inside.
Okay.
All right, friends, back in a moment.
You didn't have my food.
Sorry about that, friends. Cat is just sitting outside my window making noise to be irritating. And then when I go around to let them know that it's okay to come inside, disappearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the video.
Part 5. The Slow Coup. How Privatization Undermines Democracy.
You know what? This is actually...
I think we can stop here.
Where we're gonna stop. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's been the discussion. It's been the discussion at hand.
I put a picture in the voice chat for you.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and switch this back over so that we can take a look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Annabelle doll?
It's that someone made a very good point that they decided to take this doll on tour, and right after they took it on tour and it got to the place they were visiting, some things happened.
So that's... Okay. So that's what happened to that one plantation and those escaped convicts. Like, I'd heard about both of those things happening separately.
Yes. What they're drawing the conclusion of is this doll went on tour and this is their first stop. And after the doll had been there a day or two in this area, all these things started happening. Because the fire and the escape all happened within like...
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I would, Annabelle is a very cursed item. And you know, I take curses and this sort of hauntings I'm pretty, like, grain of salt. You know? Because I'm a believer, you've got to pass a really high bar for me to believe it. If I was a skeptic, it'd be easy for me to say, oh, well, it's all fake. You had to bring up Annabelle, and now you're breaking up. But because I'm a believer, because I really believe in it, but also have a scientific mind, the bar of proof has to be really high. And Annabelle is one of those things where it's like, I feel that's... Right. So, of course, because while we're talking about it, everything starts to malfunction.
Yes, it does.
Of course.
Can you hear me okay now?
I can. Can you see me okay now? One of them is working. There's the other one.
Okay.
It wasn't just internet.
No, it wasn't.
There we go. Yeah, no, both my cameras went offline there for a moment. Like, as we were talking about it, after you had stopped, I'd stopped being able to hear you, and I was saying to the Twitch audience that, like, I believe the lights on my camera just sort of flickered, and the camera and I was like, okay.
So, being stated that we do not doubt this, I still suggest that we send her for a visit up in D.C. Specifically to go sit in the chair at the White House.
I'd like to see her talk to Mike Pence, see who comes out on top. He is a Pope killer.
Not Mike Pence, J.D. Vance.
Oh, Vance. You're right. You're right.
Wrong VP.
Yeah, wrong VP.
Wrong piece of trash VP, yes. No, Vance is actually at this point less respectable than Pence. Pence is more respectable than Vance at this point.
Yes. Pence is lawful evil, and
Vance is...
he does inappropriate things with couches, and the Cat Lady Army will get him.
Yeah, but man, that vampiric touch... That... It wasn't even touch. I think it was just vampiric glare. Like that...
Oh no, he shook hands with him.
Oh, okay.
He shook hands with the Pope. He touched
and then they sent the next Pope right in to see the same guy. Did anyone else think maybe we should just keep him away from popes for a bit?
I want to point out that there's one country that doesn't have to worry because they told him no, he couldn't visit. You remember that?
Told Vance he couldn't visit? Or told the Pope he couldn't visit?
Told Vance.
I vaguely...
Remember he was it Greenland? Iceland. Iceland.
No, Greenland.
Either way.
Norway?
Whichever country... In order to visit, he needed people to sponsor his stay, and they told him no.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes, correct.
So, at least they know their state people are safe because he never got a chance to shake their hand because nobody would let him stay.
Right. Well, all right. All right. We have made it to the end of this section of part 2 of 3 that's being 4 parts.
Are we doing a raid?
Oh, of course we are.
Okay.
Always raid out.
That's fair.
Always raid out if you can. It's
Life Fathom Deeps?
Huh? I'm sorry, what?
Life Fathom Depth? Anixia?
I'm sorry, words?
I'm mentioning old WoW raids.
Oh. Okay, that explains that. Because I didn't, I wasn't much of a WoW player. Well, yes. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you guys for being here. I know it's a late one, but thank you guys. Thank you, Kristen to 386. Cat, Peanut Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And stick around for the raid. And now is the time on the show when I say, as they say around here, 2 up, 2 down, VA, double deuces. We're out, y'all.
I really hope the next mud crab that you stab turns out to be a murloc in disguise and they bite your ankles.